is brought to you by Globals.
Hello to you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you once again as we take another rendezvous to discuss issues of utmost importance to the global world. Today, we are looking at new order dynamics slash soft power. And of course, bringing in-depth analysis on the role of soft power or how effective soft power is in ensuring the new world order materializes. The world is undergoing a global transformation, challenging traditional international rules and standards enshrined in a school of thought of the new world order. In an increasingly interconnected world where conventional measures of power are being re-evaluated, the concept of soft power, coined by Harvard political scientist late Joseph Neer, emerges as a critical framework for understanding international relations, defined as the ability of a state to influence others through attraction and persuasion rather than coercion, as is in the case of hard power. Soft power actually denotes the cultural, ideological, and diplomatic tools that nations use to shape global perception and build cooperative relations, highly using public policy diplomacy according to the Brand Finance Global Soft Power Index of 2025. This ongoing global transformation is noted, and of course, countries have been highlighted, countries practicing high soft power dynamics, and it noted that the United Nations, the United States, I beg your pardon, returns its top ranking, but with declining reputation, while China has strategically climbed the second position, overtaking the United Kingdom, according to the reports from the Brand Finance Global Index for the first time. And this process that the shifts highlights the competitive landscape of soft power, where cultural, export, educational initiatives, and robust international networks often define a nation's global standing. Reports equally note that the United States maintains its earlier, through Hollywood, technological advancement and commitments to humanitarian efforts, yet faces criticism for internal political divisions that tarnish its image globally. Meanwhile, China's aggressive investment in infrastructure, particularly through the Belt and Road Initiative, illustrates its ability to leverage economic clout to enhance its global influence, albeit without not without controversy. And now, as we examine these dynamics, ladies and gentlemen, we again pose or bring to the table essential questions of what soft power is, a concept that was coined by Joseph Neer in his book Bound to Lead, that was published in 1990, but the concept actually was existing in the later 80s. And we asked those questions: how can nations also navigate the intricacies of soft power in an era that is largely marked by geopolitical fragmentation? Can soft power work without hard power? All they have to correlate in today's present global structure. And of course, in a world where the roles of engagement are rapidly changing, understanding and mastering the act of soft power becomes paramount for nations seeking to thrive and influence within this intricate web of international relations. And ladies and gentlemen, together with a panel of experts, we are going to discuss in total what soft power is and how it has influenced global transformations in the era of the Cold War and even after the two world wars, and how effective it is in the contemporary society, and also wanting to understand if actually using soft power can mitigate some of the adverse consequences which are actually felt by mankind, particularly those of the lower level in society. I will join you right after the jingle to present to you this panel of experts to give more insight or in-depth analysis on our topic for discussions. This is Global Insights. Welcome back. Should we continue in the concept of the roles-based order with the new realities of the new world? Welcome again and take this moment with us as we now go to uncover the panel with much delight. I will take us first of all to the North African nation of Algeria, where we are joined by Professor Laid Zaglami, Algiers University Faculty of Information and Communication. So welcome this day to Global Insight as we continue to analyze the place of soft power. Welcoming you, Professor Laid. I'll be giving you, first of all, this question. We want to look at what soft power is and how these soft power dynamics have played in the situation in Western Sahara. We know the position of Morocco and Algeria, and we know that for over 50 years, there has not been a full escalation or confrontation. And now we want to use this as a preamble to understanding the concept of soft power in today's world. Please, your mic is muted, Professor Lai.
Hello?
I can hear you now, please.
Good. Good afternoon to you, to your panel. I'm so pleased to be part of this panel this afternoon. Well, to start with, regarding your question, I think we have to be clear right now that this concept of soft power, which was in vogue in 1990s, and of course the promoter was the Professor Joseph Nye, I think that concept is no more valid right now, because if we have to give just very clear and precise definition of soft power, is the opposite of using proclaimed by, for instance, the first power in the world, and particularly the President Donald Trump. He is talking, he is advocating peace through threats. What does it mean that? It means he is imposing peace by brandishing threats, of course, fear, pressure, military menace, and so forth. So this is exactly what is going on. Now, in relation with the situation in Western Sahara, I think the option that US is developing, first of all, what they did, they accept the recognition of Western Sahara as a part of Morocco against the normalization of the relation between Kingdom of Morocco and Israel. This is the market. This is the deal. This is the deal which has gone for now almost 3-4 years. And of course, more than that, Morocco was part of what they call Abraham Accord. So having in mind this, USA is giving a green card to Morocco to annex, to incorporate, to occupy Western Sahara. And of course, while the real issue is about decolonization, because until now, Western Sahara is still under the Four Commission and exactly 1514 resolution, which indicate that Western Sahara is an autonomous state. I mean, is not a state. In other words, is still in the process of decolonization of its independence. And for the last 50 years, and so as you mentioned it, Morocco tried to quail, to contain Western Sahara ambition of being independent. And if we have to look very quickly to the history of this land, of this territory, it was occupied by the Spanish colonization until 1975.
Okay.
And there afterwards there was a tacit deal between General Franco of Spain and King Hassan II of Morocco against the will of the population. And of course afterwards there was there was a war. There was a lot of war between the two countries, and until 1991, before that, there was even kind of a direct negotiation between Western Sahara and Morocco under the supervision of so many United Nations envoy, and particularly Christopher Ross. So in 1991, they agreed on ceasefire, but since that, Morocco is seizing the opportunity to run a campaign of disinformation against Western Sahara. And now we end up with the narrative that Western Sahara is part of what they call autonomous, the 2007 resolution of Morocco, which claimed for, of course, the local autonomy, and but Western Sahara denied and refused utterly this proposal. So that is to say, we are in front of status quo situation, no more. But soft power does not help. On the contrary, we have one side, European countries, Western countries are supporting Morocco in its invasion of Western Sahara.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Layith. Subsequently, we continue to understand better the stakes involved in the concept of soft power and how this is meeting the dictates of the New World Order enshrined in the aspects of multilateralism, and of course looking for policies that meets the interest of nations globally. And we go to the United States of America to acknowledge Ashil Eki, corporate finance expert and CEO of Washington Valuation Group. It's a pleasure having you this day. Mr. Eki, having to get your own holistic analysis of what soft power entails and how it has been very prevalent in the aspects of economy, especially global economics.
Good morning, Clarice. Good morning, Julia. Good morning, everybody. Listen, this topic is very deep, it's very profound. It's the most effective way of running an economy or country. Partnerships today, relationship between states and different entities. So soft power is always been the way of diplomacy, right? So the way that people interact. But we can't discard hard power. Definitely, hard power is used when it's necessary for whatever reason, for whatever interest. But if I if I, focus on Africa today in terms of soft power, this is my area I wanted to explore the most in this conversation. I think Africa's soft power is rising today, and it's increasingly dynamic, and it's Africa is leveraging, culture, creative industries, sports, music, movies. Africa is building partnerships today. We see that the influence of some countries in Africa is becoming more and more important. Especially given the power, the economic power that Africa offers for the future today. We see that the whole South, partnership is working very well. It's a good, platform for Africa to be able to have its own say, its own vision on how the world should operate. Creative leaders are happening in every areas of, like I said, industries like music, gaming, different areas of culture and heritage, like the great pyramids of Egypt, the great Egypt history that have attracted most of the teachers that we look up to today, who are teaching us things that that they came and learned in our own continent, right? So in terms of diplomacy, Africa is becoming, just like Professor Zaglami said, countries like Morocco, Egypt, South Africa are leading, through multilateral engagements, strategic alliances, and things like that. So there's a vast, area that is very important for Africa to be able to plow in and make its own way and show its own, specificities, and that could have an impact if we do it right, But I think it's a process coming out of our history of colonization, slavery, colonization, neocolonization. So it's going to take us time, but I believe, given the fact that the future of the world today seems to be on the African side now, with all the resources, all the mining, all the potential in terms of youth, the population is young, there's so many potential, and every company in the world is trying to have a say or invest in Africa, because that's where the future is going to be. So we can leverage that soft power that I just mentioned in different areas to be able to assert ourselves in the future, and that would be a positive for Africa.
Absolutely, yeah. Given that the interest should be to meet the global, developmental projects of the continent that will bring value to the natural resources and even the human capital resource, which you just highlighted in your primary discuss, Mr. Ashil Eki. Subsequently, we are going to understand, look at the setbacks of soft power in Africa and the way forward. To Russia, let's welcome Yulia Berg, a political scientist who doubles as founder Global Experts Club. Welcome to today's edition, dear Yulia. This topic, I think, is timely, because when we look at what is happening across the EU and even countries across the EU, we saw the president of Germany saying that it is necessary, given the drastic global transformation, that Germany adopts both hard and soft power, while laying emphasis on the soft power principle. We also want to note that you've been very engaged in this global transformation, proposing new alternatives that can actually mitigate, physical escalations, which have led to untold misery and death of millions of people. So, in your own perspective, let's understand the concept of soft power and see how it interplay with hard power, and how it can be relevant in today's, geopolitical dispensation.
Thank you, dear Clarice. I'm very happy to join today's program. And I think this topic is very important right now, especially given that the African continent is now being shaken by various kinds of protests and various kinds of civil unrest, so that sometimes even results into regime changes, as we could have observed just recently in Madagascar. And as the escalations were happening both in Tanzania and in Cameroon. So according to the Russian official, let's say, point of view that is also described in the documents produced by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the soft power as a, let's say, as a set of methods, has a regime change as its goal. So we can be talking about the practicalities of soft power, which are mostly related to dealing with civil society and civil society actors and NGOs and whatsoever else. And I think each of the experts present here could give a million of examples of media campaigns and other kinds of things that were a part of the soft power. But despite of the fact that it sounds nice, soft power, right? It sounds much better than the hard power.
Absolutely.
What once again is at the core of the definition officially given by the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs is that soft power aims at regime change, while in the Russian official rhetorics, such terms are used as international cooperation, support or fostering international development, and other relevant terms that imply more of a focus on stability and possibly reforms, but not, let's say, radical ones involving regime changes. And what I would also like to highlight right here at the intro to the deep and interesting topic is that now we see that the trend is showing us that change of regime is no longer happening through the elections, which means that a completely different variety of soft power tools are being used in order to change the leaders of the countries. If before it was still decided on the voting day, now we see that those forces at work do not even care much about election results, and they do not even focus on the elections themselves, while they're trying to make sure that they have the protest activity going on, which provides enough of reasons for a regime change. We could see it all over the place. We could see it in Ukraine in 2014. We could see it in South America and in different countries. We could see this happening in African countries, and we could see a lot of attempts that failed, for example, in Belarus, attempts in Russia, attempts in Tanzania, for example, and some of the attempts in Cameroon as well.
Absolutely, yeah, putting us in a state of greater reflection on how to ensure that we understand the narratives or the dictates of the new world order, so that the rhetorics of tomorrow should not reflect those of yesterday, where nations actually felt like they were treated, especially in things that decisions were happening globally. As today we've had the African voice resonating in this 21st century, but then we want to look at how it is doing so in using soft power, and to what extent it has yielded across the African continent. with you Paseka Faromeli, who is a UNESA academia and also member of the Convention for Pan-Africanism and Progress. Welcome to today's edition, less from the African perspective. And of course, when we get the definition of a soft power, and of course, something that has been working from the 80s and enshrined also in a book coined by Joseph Neer in 1990, Bound to Lead. Can we independently say that Africa has understood the soft power tactics and how it can navigate the new world order dynamics to change the narratives that we have today, from blame to also seeing that we capitalize and create a scope for various decision making for the continent?
Thank you, Clarice. Thank you for welcoming me to this panel. Looking forward to this engagement with my colleagues who are also in the panel. I've heard some great points, and I'm hoping that I'll hear even more going forward. Thank you for the question. The question of Africa and understanding soft power it's a very complex one, because from my observation, I do not believe that we do understand how soft power works or how we could be able to use it as a continent. The reason that I'm saying this is because a lot of the time what we have come to notice is that a lot of leaders, when they want to interrupt a country, or external leaders specifically, when they want to interrupt a country, they do not use soft power to try and manipulate systems so that they can be able to get what they want from that specific country. I can give you the example of Rwanda and the Eastern Congo. What that is not the ability to sufficiently use soft power to be able to manipulate the Congo into agreeing with Rwanda, but it goes back to using hard power to be able to achieve what the end goal is. And we know that it is land, it is resources, natural resources that the Congo is so strong, is so wealthy with. So with that being said, I think I do not see us at this current moment as a continent being strong enough to be able to use soft power to be able to manipulate or interact with anyone outside of the continent. I'll give you an example. From my observation, I believe that countries that have been able to sufficiently use soft power are countries such as Russia, China, America, some countries in Europe. They've been able to use soft power, but there's a common trend among these countries. Specifically, the common trend is that they are wealthy countries, so they're able to use that wealth to be able to manipulate systems, to be able to negotiate from a point of strength when they're negotiating with other countries that might be positioned in a more weakened socio-economic position. So it is essential that we understand that in itself, soft power does have a correlation with finances. There needs to be financial power, economic power, and economic strength for you to be able to apply and use soft power. I'll give an example that I've found quite interesting, that I've been thinking about a while now. The use of US aid to be able to manipulate systems. US aid has been such a useful weapon for the United States to be able to manipulate policies in different countries, and that for me is soft power at work. But now what we have seen is that a lot of countries had already started moving away from the United States. But now what makes it worse is that now even these organizations that have benefited from the use of US aid, that have been able, these global powerhouses that have been able to work throughout the world through the use of US aid, have now decided to, slightly move away from the USA. And that's when you get to see soft power in practice and how it can be removed or misused or unused, become unused. And in this specific context, now we will start seeing the USA losing all these support bases that it has held in terms of people supporting any move that they make. They will face a lot of criticism. People are going to look at them differently, and it is already happening. It is just going to get worse and worse over time. And that in itself itself, and I'm not saying that the US aid is a force of good. I do not believe so. I do understand though the power that it has provided the USA and its ability to influence policies in countries that are not close to the USA, specifically when we look at the context of Africa. But with that being said, I think something is important for us as Africans. If we want to speak or discuss soft power, we'll need to firstly understand it. And I do think that some countries do understand it, even though we cannot necessarily use it because of the socio-economic position that we currently find ourselves in. So in us understanding soft power, then we can also be able to understand how we're being manipulated or not manipulated by those who have the power. I'm sorry for going long. Thank you, Clarice.
Absolutely. It's important that we understand the concepts and, of course, design a perfect agenda for the African continent as the continent engages in the concept of globalization in the new dispensation of the New World Order. And now we go back to the United States of America to welcome Dr. Eddie Eric, Global Analyst and also Executive Secretary of the Committee of Action for Cote d'Ivoire. You're welcome, Doctor. And of course, I'll be welcoming you with this question that seeks to highlight the types of forms of soft power and how these have been, in play and in terms of international relations and diplomacy.
Thank you, Clarisse. I want to say hi to all the co-panelists as well. Very quickly, as we talked about soft power, it's the foreign policy tool. Soft power, you clearly laid it out earlier with the U.S. School of International Studies. We have had a power. That's when countries are utilizing tools like military capabilities or military assets, or even some other financial sanctions, to get what they want. When it comes to soft power, we are looking at another form of influence. We are looking, for instance, very basically how some countries can provide, for instance, scholarships to a student from another country to come study in theirs. We are looking at the diplomatic ties that exist between the countries. We are looking at the support that some countries can give other ones. All of those things, are geared toward the preparing countries to get, others, in this real world of realists or other, approach that, we may have. It is a matter of getting a country as a partner, as a country, as a friend, or even not as a friend, but as a foe, to be able to do whatever you want to do that they will have not done, otherwise. This is a very basic understanding of a soft power that I want to put in there. We have seen with some concrete examples and lay rest on that question. In the 1960s, for instance, when President John F. Kennedy was in power in the United States, he is until today credited to be one of the U.S. presidents that clearly said the U.S. cannot watch, for instance, the African continent to grow as many more countries were becoming independent. What happened? You have the provision of some kind of assistance in terms of foreign students or African students coming to study in the United States. The father of the U.S. former president, Barack Obama, older, Hussein Obama, was among those students, under, forget, the name of this Kenyan leader at the time. He's not Arap Moi. But those leaders of the independence were able to agree on that one. In other countries, you have, for instance, in Cote d'Ivoire, the current head of state, Mr. Alassane Ouattara, that also benefited from this kind of a scholarship back in 1962 to come study in the United States. So this is actually, and it continues still today, when you have countries such as China and Russia announcing that there will be offering some loans, or when China, the last FOCAC, says that they're going to be forgiving a huge amount of loans or debt for some African countries. All of those things will come into play in terms of soft power. Clarisse, I want to yield back to you.
Absolutely. Let me continue with you this time around, Dr. Eddie Eric. When you listen critically what you've highlighted, it shows soft power is a tool of international relations. But then we want to look at the ramifications of this, because it is actually persuasion, but then there is the consequences of such. And that's why in our preamble we highlighted that it is imperative to understand the end result of soft power in global collaboration and somehow globalization. So let's understand it from the African context, because we see soft power dynamics at play in Africa. But unfortunately, according to some pundits, the soft power is actually putting Africa, at loggerheads. We want to take the example of the eco currency, and how the president of Cote d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara, played along with France. Let's try to use this now to explain probably how maybe the manner in which soft power is being actually managed in Africa, and how detrimental it is to maybe the realization of continental objectives, particularly when it comes to diplomacy and global politics.
First of all, I want, with the example that you use for the ECHO and the role that the head of state of Cote d'Ivoire played in a kind of a thwarting or diverting what happened, it will be also very tricky to lay that out as a soft power, right? Okay. Once you mentioned, France coming into that, some elements of this foreign tool that we call soft power can actually also be some element of hard power. You're talking about, what finances here. You're talking about, what the currency. You're talking about the French CFA. You're talking about, with the ECHO that the Economic Community of West African States wanted for a long period of time, over 30 years ago now, and even more, wanted to utilize or implement as the unique currency for the entire West African sub-region. We saw what almost, what happened under the impulse of this head of state with the backing of France that tended to utilize or make the ECHO, implement the ECHO, but making actually a change of name of what we know as the French CFA to become the ECHO with the same apparatus. So is that an element of a softer power? I'm kind of going to be, on the outskirts and say, hey, be careful in there, that can be some element. Now, second thing very quickly, contrary to what my co-panelists, was said earlier, I do believe that, African countries understand what soft power means. They even understand what, what hard power means, because we have a foreign policy. African countries, believe it or not, but do have their foreign policy. What is the benefit of that foreign policy, and to what extent it is really moving African countries, interest in the global stage? That is another question. Let us look at the fact that, soft power plays hand in hand with hard power at the same time, because it is one foreign policy tool working, okay, when it does not work, another one comes into play. When it comes to the African countries, let me give that a final example and the rest on that question. Recently, for the election that just took place, you saw that, a country such as Nigeria, the former vice president of Nigeria was appointed the head of the ECOWAS delegation to Cote d'Ivoire to supervise the elections. There are some elements in there that we can clearly analyze to understand how African countries themselves, in the concept or within the context of the South-South cooperation that they have, how do they use the different tools that they have? Cote d'Ivoire, we know how this country, regarding, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, together with Nigeria, how they have tried to implement their aspect of foreign policy and the powers that they have, may it be soft or hard, to try to intervene and invert what is happening actually in those countries. So I'm saying this to say that, in terms of understanding what foreign policy is, in terms of understanding what soft power is, what hard power is, it will be very tricky and a little bit derogatory, I believe, to say that the African countries do not, understand that. Once we say that, we are giving them a very clear and narrow escape to judge them on the fact that constantly and consistently The different African governments and African international institutions, regional economic powers are actually failing in advancing the interests of African countries out the global stage, because this is all what foreign policy is about. Clarisse.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eddie Rika. And we're going to continue this time around. We're coming back now to Ashiu Eki, still looking at it from the economic perspective. Let's understand how, how can maybe economic collaboration between emerging African economies and established powers now influence soft power perceptions in the present dispensation. I don't know if this example I'm giving actually ties with the economic collaboration, because we know that there is presently the de-dollarization move. And of course, listening to Christine Lagarde, if I'm correct, recently she said that the EU has been working to see that other countries adopt the euro as the legal tender, but actually answering a question if this will already replace the dollar as the international, money of transaction. She was skeptical about, because she highlighted some aspects of her, no strong military and other aspects that are still, are a setback. Let's try to understand how this economic collaboration, between emerging economies and already established powers can, play a balanced dynamics of soft power.
Right. So that's a very good point here that you're making, Clarisse. I think I'm going to beg to differ with my friend Poseka, about the fact that African countries don't know what soft power is. I'm not sure exactly that was his terminology, but I think we have an issue of leveraging the soft power that we have to our benefits. That's where the issue is. It's not that we don't understand what soft power is. No, it's not that we don't know what it is and how to use it, but we are not organized as a country. We're not. When we go to those special meetings that we have every year, those summits with other countries, we just get in the morning. Each president gets in the morning and just goes. There's no organization. There is no structure. There is nothing that we are sure to get from those meetings, and so it's a problem. So we don't know how to leverage that, how to sell our soft power. That's the idea. You see, America's very good at selling. They can have you sell any kind of war. If they want to go to war with any countries, even if against your country, America can sell the war to you. So you, belonging to that country, will be happy to go to war because they know how to sell it. So we don't know how to sell our strength, and that's where the issue is. But when it comes to the economy, as mentioned, soft power has a growing, immeasurable impact on the African economy. It attracts investments. It creates jobs. It boosts export. It brings strength to global negotiation in some position. The issue that we have is it's not at scale yet. It's not at the level that is expected from from the country, for our people. So it is still very it's still very dormant. That the way we use that soft power, but it is there. It is just not as powerful in terms of a return on investment as it should be. But it's there, so we can't deny that. So the work that we have to do is to work in learning how to leverage that effectively. And so I'll see some countries that, for example, the three Sahelian countries, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, they are using they're learning to use soft power effectively now. You remember the United States decided to penalize Mali with a $10,000 fee for visa, right? Remember that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what happened? Well, the United States had to reverse course. How can the United States reverse course on a decision they made like that? $10,000 for every visa. How did Mali succeed in having the United States reverse course? By using soft power. They use reciprocity in this case. They did the exact thing to the United States, and it became a problem for the United States. So they reverse course. That is using soft power effectively. And so when you say to people, if you want to do business with me, you have to respect three things: my sovereignty, my freedom of choosing my partners, and my choice, my decision, whatever, the decision that I make with who I'm going to do business with. You have to respect those three things. And if somebody doesn't agree with that, fine, you can find another country. But Mali is not going to be the country you're going to be able to manipulate. And same thing with Burkina Faso and Niger. So they are learning to use soft power to make a very important impact on some of the biggest countries in the world. China, same thing with Niger. Niger did the same thing with China, so it's not necessarily the strength of our economy, the financial strength, all that stuff. It's using the power that you have effectively. This also goes into couples. When you're married to a woman, or you're married to a man, there are things there are power dynamics within the couple, and so somebody is going to use his soft power to have somebody else, the other person, reverse course on some bad decisions. Absolutely. So those are things that happen every day. The issue with Africa is that we're not doing it effectively at this level to be able to gain the most for our economies, for the people, but it's a working process. And like I said, we're coming very far away. And we still have a long ways to go to be able to match what's happening now.
Absolutely. Just to come again to highlight another aspect of soft power, I think these are key terms which are actually repeating across international communication channels at this moment. We want to talk about the aspect of propaganda, misinformation, disinformation. According to some people, these and many more are tools of soft power that in the new contestation of between great powers, they are using this as a tool for soft power to be able to create that influence, or maybe bring appeal some sort of I don't know if we should use the word sympathy from countries that are very attractive to their interest. And that is why with you, Professor Laïta Zaklami, we want to understand the soft power dynamics in the context of communications, and of course still looking with clear examples on how Africa won't be entangled or feel entrapped in these different words that in the great power dynamics of fights, they are using it for their interest, because we all know, as has been stated, diplomacy is all about interest, and any means can be used to attain that personal interest.
Yes, you are quite right, Clarice. Well, actually, let's go back to some fundamentals about soft power. What are the components of soft power right now? First of all, we have sports, a good football player. We have education, we have economy, we have culture, we have diplomacy, we have democracy, we have freedom of the press, freedom of election, etc. All of these, I would say, assets are part of the soft power strategy, and each country develop its own strategy to promote, to advocate soft power. And in the case of Africa, I feel very sorry for my continent. Although we have a potential of one of the elements I just mentioned, whether it comes to climate, whether it comes to economy, whether it comes to mineral, whether it comes to population, youth, etc. We are 55 countries, and we don't have any single seat in the United Nations Security Council. Can you imagine that? So we are far behind, lagging behind. And what the African countries should do, first of all, they should explore their own potential of soft power. And of course, as I said earlier, soft power is within the context of each country, and therefore we have to assess, to evaluate, to know what are our soft power potential. And in the case of, as I said, Africa, we have the continent of the future. Unfortunately, world media is misrepresenting, is distorting the image of Africa. They always portrayed it as a country of hopeless, of darkness, etc. We should reverse this. We should reverse these narratives. And I think if there is a strategy for the African continent to develop in terms of soft power, is first of all to value their own potential, to value their own capacity in terms, as I said, natural resources, economy, politics, independence, sovereignty, and all these. I mean, I feel very sorry how on earth we are the continent with 55, with over 1 billion population, and we don't have any impact on the international relation. Time has come that we should right now think of how to assume, how to get a position within, how to contribute to the world. Of course, order, whether it's in economy, politics, and so forth. We should initiate dynamics in all domains. And of course, right now, we had, for the last, for instance, couple of weeks, and exactly in September, we have in Algeria, for instance, there was Inter-Trade African Summit, which constitute over 100 countries attend, of course, and principally African countries. So this is the strategy, the methodology is to explore our own potential, which are part of a strategy to develop it. And African Union, as a matter of fact, is the leadership, is leading institution that should develop the soft power when it comes to Africa.
Absolutely, for the betterment of African countries. We going back to you, Julia Berg. When we want to look at the soft power dynamics or even global powers, Russia and other countries are being highlighted. Now, let's take the case of the war that broke out in Ukraine in 2022. According to some pundits, the war came after the departure of the German Chancellor Angela Merkel, because they've highlighted that in order to, limit or maybe stop the escalation that is happening in present-day society, she used soft power tools, particularly with the Russian Federation, But then, leaving office in 2021, we saw the events that happened in 2022, and they are still actually ongoing at the moment. We want to use this, of course, to see the clash that do happen sometimes between hard power and soft power, and how this actually challenges the rules-based society, or probably traditional international standards, which we see that are highly violated by those who set the rules themselves. And what's the way forward in present society of global transformation?
Well, Ukraine is a great example of the soft power at work and of foreign involvement into domestic policies affecting the mindset of the people itself. So Ukraine was a testing ground for various kinds of technologies for several decades prior to the escalations that we're still observing over there. And just to remind, most of the western territories of Ukraine prior to the World War II used to be a part of Poland. So that is a region of Ukraine itself that is in terms of culture, in terms of language, in terms of many other things, it's much closer to Poland. And cities like Lviv were classical medieval Polish cities. Another part of Ukraine, not too long ago, it used to be a part of Hungary. So it's the region of Carpathian Mountains, and it's still culturally and in many other senses more linked to Hungary than to what is called Ukraine itself, right? The regions of the central part, they were let's say the classical Ukrainian territories, that central part. And what is in the east of Ukraine historically was always the Russian-speaking territory. It was the cities there were founded by Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia of 19th or 17th century, of 18th century, sorry. So we see that Ukraine, after the World War II, it gained a lot of territories, and then Crimea was added in the times of the Soviet Union to administrative unit that was called Ukraine. So the history itself already implies the different kinds of cleavages that are possible in the country, and the same history can be traced in many other places where we see potential for ethnic or other conflicts already built into that history. But another question is if the country follows a path of, let's say, unity and focusing on constructive agenda or not. So what was happening in Ukraine, that part of propaganda, anti-Russian, very pro-Polish, and very pro-Western, has been unrolled actively, very actively unrolled back in the 90s. There are quite a lot of studies and research on this, and it can be easily found. But even in terms of language, it was not the case even 20 years ago that the Ukrainian language was that widespread. So it was imposed, and specifically the language has become one of the problems for the people in eastern Ukraine when in 2014, as a result of a series of soft power instruments being applied, including very active work in the media, with the NGOs, with the political elites, what took place there back in 2014 was a coup d'etat. And as a result of the coup d'etat, the people in the eastern regions lost the possibility to speak and practice officially the Russian language at schools, at administrations, and whatsoever else. And that was the last drop in that internal conflict. So the war in Ukraine started in 2014, but it was an internal war, almost like a regional civil war. Which was called an anti-terrorist operation from the Ukrainian side, and became more or less a war for independence for the people in those regions that did manage to kind of break out. And this is exactly where the new level of escalation is taking place since 2022, when Russia intervened as a foreign actor in order to protect its own borders, interests, and the Russian-speaking populations of those new self-proclaimed republic that are still not recognized as a part of Russia by many actors at the global arena. So that's pretty much the case. And what is important to highlight there is that the extent of soft power, propaganda, and everything else was huge. You mentioned the role of the German Chancellor. What I would like to remind is that she was the one who signed the Minsk Accords as and her signature was a guarantee of implementation of peaceful agreements that were in place in 2014 and 2015. And after she resigned, she wrote it in her book. She admitted it in several public statements and interviews that it was never the case that the European actors, including France and Germany, were to follow the Minsk Accords or to make sure they're being followed. The only reason for those documents, those conflict settlement agreements to be signed, the only reason was to give time to Ukraine to make sure that it gets additional training and equipment from NATO. This is very important because she admitted herself that she never meant to do what she signed. And for many people, it's a point when not just German, but European diplomacy and leadership itself has lost trust, because when they openly say that they sign papers that they never mean to actually implement, when they just wanted to give time to one of the parties to get more weapons and to get better trained, it's clearly something that aims at an escalation. So the escalation in Ukraine was definitely inevitable, and the soft power being enrolled there for decades played its role, for sure.
And of course, the question we are actually asking at this particular moment will be, can we talk of a world where we look for constructive agenda, given the present, the geopolitical contestation? And I will say, I think it's the Prime Minister of Ethiopia who highlighted, Abiy Ahmed, who highlighted that the African continent is actually facing a new era of colonialization and in the aspect of militarism and conquest. And now, to be able to tackle this, we need also this soft power dynamics, which are also tools which have proven effective if we have listened keenly to the analysis presented by you already. Coming back to you, Paseka, you were very pessimistic about the reality of Africa in the world, the new world order, and in the use of soft power. And we highlighted already that foreign policy is one of those tools that can easily be used to leverage this soft power dynamics for the betterment of the African people. I think I should borrow the words of Yulia by saying for a constructive agenda for the continent. In your perspective, we already have one example of Mali. What are those, aspects of the foreign policy aspect that can be leveraged in Africa, particularly under organizations like the African Union, even regional organizations, and at a particular level by countries in their interaction with global partners?
Thank you, Clarice. I think I will start by just responding to my friend Achille about what I was saying about African leaders, and I do think that it feeds to your question. The definition of soft power is a persuasive approach to international relations, typically involving the use of economic and cultural influence. So I was saying that I'm not saying that Africans do not understand soft power. I am saying that we cannot use it at this point because we have not positioned ourselves in a position of strength. In order for you to be persuasive, you need to have economic strength, financial strength to be able to influence economies. And I do not believe that Africa is yet in that position. So that's what I was trying to say at the start of that. So coming back to the continent, I think soft power would be something that would be so powerful throughout the continent, right? And I've seen it a few times that some countries have tried to use the approach of using soft power, but I think that we are too similar to be able, or we are in a very similar socioeconomic space to be able for us to try and use and implement the use of soft power to be able to influence each other's economies and each other's cultures. So if that is the case, now it becomes quite difficult to say who, if then, is powerful enough, should be able to drive Africa towards a common goal in which we would all be able to be manipulated, or not manipulated, sorry for the use of the incorrect word, but we'd be directed towards a similar goal and target. And I think that it would have to start with the UN itself. The AU itself, the African Union itself. Because a stronger African Union would be able to solve problems that we currently see happening in the Sudan, would be able to solve problems that are currently happening in the Congo. And also these past elections that have been quite ridiculous because they've been presented as elections that are democratic, but they're very problematic, you know. And I think that Julia did speak to an extent to a country like Tanzania, what happened recently in Tanzania. And I remember we had a discussion around that. And to an extent, even your own country, what's this, Cameroon, you know, it's very difficult for us to have a genuine discourse if we do not start by being able to empower the AU enough for it to be able to direct us towards a common goal. So right now, with the case of the Mali, I think one of the strongest points that we could see that Abraham Traore has been able to do, one of the strongest things that he's been able to do, is that he's been able to align with people who seem to somewhat understand or agree with his ideas and ideologies in terms of what he hopes to do with the country moving forward. And I think through these alignments, we see a somewhat positive rapport that builds externally with other countries, even not just other countries in the external outside of the continent, but we see there in the Sahel with other countries that also had coups, we can say, in recent years, who have said that they are going to work together to be able to remove external influence, specifically through France. And we can see that that has had a massive impact on France itself. So that on its own, I think it could go back to what actually had indicated, that something of that nature is the use of soft power to be able to negotiate within yourselves or between yourselves, so that you can oust a what we can regard as a powerhouse of global politics, in this specific context in France, even though we know that technically France in itself can never survive. France will collapse without the reliance on Africa. So we know that we cannot make that discourse. We can call it a superpower, but we know it's a superpower by association. The minerals it has, it's by association. The wealth it has, is by association. And that is why France is fighting so hard to try and get back into the continent. And I'm happy that it has not been what do you call this, positive for it so far. So yeah, I hope that I did speak to your question, Clarice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paseka Farumali. And then we asked the question, if you know, some countries are great powers due to maybe association, then do you think it's you know, a logical aspect or thing to keep you know, soft power aside, because Africa hasn't really attained that economic independence or probably the right mindset to leverage the dynamics of the new power, you know, new world order in multilateralism. I think this question I can direct to you, Dr. Eddie Eric.
Clarice, you know that, you know what, the step toward that, you know, as we talk about, you know what, multilateralism, you know what, bilateral agreement and all that, there are key pointers in here that I believe I want to mention. First of all, before we even talk about, you know what, the African Union, before we even talk about, you know what, the regional economic powers, as we mentioned, soft power, hard power, these are foreign policy tools that are actually in the hands of countries. Whether those countries, you know, can invent any other mechanism, you know, to assert their presence, you know, maintain their borders, maintain their physical integrity. Of course, you know, maintain the integrity of the population that recognize those countries as being theirs, and of course, you know, for which they are citizens. Let's start with what the countries have been able to do. A while ago, there is this literature that emerged about what we have called the regional hegemons, meaning that, you know, some countries within the specific regional economic communities in Africa that could actually play the lead role In West Africa, for instance, Nigeria was identified as one. In Southern Africa, South Africa, of course, emerged during the time of Nelson Mandela, President Thabo Mbeki, as another country. In East Africa, Kenya today is looked upon as a gateway. And in Northern Africa, countries such as Egypt and others, maybe also playing this role. And these are countries that at one point were looked at as a potential countries that can have a seat at the United Nations, as Professor Lahid mentioned earlier, so that Africa can have a more asserted presence in the global arena. We are not there yet. But again, as we look at what the African continent itself, in order to strengthen that, I will suggest and I will propose and I will actually mention and recommend that the African countries themselves, in order to assert themselves at this international level again, being able to utilize what we know today as soft power, since it is a topic today, there is a number of things that needs to be done. How do we want to be strong enough to look for whatever we need at the global level when internally we continue to falter? When internally we continue to have electoral processes, for instance, that are very, very, very fallacious, that are very, that fail all the time, that are not progressive, that do not actually satisfy the African populations themselves.
Absolutely.
How do we become, attractive to other countries when we still have the potential to do so? In the South-South or African relations, for instance, although we are all much alike, this resemblance that we have among ourselves can also be utilized as a potential to move forward. Example, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, the two countries combined, produce almost all the cocoa beans in the world. Professor Ashir, let's help each other understand why till today, after all these many years of producing cocoa, these two countries still do not have a common, strong, robust 5-year, 10 years of policy to move forward and making sure that if the international market is not purchasing cocoa at this price, then these two countries will be doing X, Y, and Z. What is lacking? Why is that? Although Sheikh Anta Diop warned already, or even instructed, that Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Guinea, these three countries, with the waterfront that they have in there, by themselves will be able, with good infrastructures built, will be able to supply energy to the rest of Africa for 50 years. That was the years ago that Sheikh Anta Diop talked about. Why aren't we there yet? These are the tools, if they were in place, would have allowed the African countries to secure their presence and really use each other of the leverage when it comes to either soft power or hard power to go to the global arena and seek what they wanted to seek. I want to end on this example. When South Africa emerged out of, quote unquote, the apartheid system, you have a head of state, Nelson Mandela for sure, who served one term, but then when President Thabo Mbeki came, he put in place a Pan-African way of resolving African conflicts. He was critiqued, in Zimbabwe for not being too strong on the President Mugabe. That's not the point. The point is, he wanted to have an African-centered, authentic way of resolving the African conflict. We scored quite a number of victory under that. Here's an element of a soft power, or can be also an element of a hard power, because he relied also on what? The strength of the South African army to move forward. And then last but not least, Clarice talking about that, let us not forget one thing. As we talk about soft power, it becomes soft, effective, also with the backing and the understanding that whoever this power is applied to does not react, there is another power that can come in there. That's when hard power comes in. So the two of them has to be put into place. So if we don't have a strong military in Africa today, I believe that the time has come to say, hey, in this multipolar world, where else can the African countries look at instead of looking at the traditional way? And you see where I'm going. If Cote d'Ivoire continues to rely Cameroon and all these countries continue to rely on France, for instance, for their military capabilities, maybe the time has come to say, hey, we may have some other countries in the world. How will that help us, move forward? And that's where we are actually waiting for the current head of state in Africa. The reason why some of them are being maintained is because, again, to the pleasure of many Western powers, they are actually not going to go in there. Reason why, you see France very quickly moving to support and congratulating our President Biya for his 8th term in power, right? Since we're in elementary school and some of them will probably go to retirement and still in power, right? Yeah. So that's why you have a Mr. Alassane Ouattara in Cote d'Ivoire. After all that have been said, today is negotiating a 4th term, and who knows? God giving him 20 more years, he will be there till whenever. I want to yield on that, Carlos. I'm sorry.
And that's where the problematic lies, because the essence, of course, is for us to understand where the problem is and how to probably bring practical solutions to the problem. Let me come back to you, Achille Eke, with this aspect of how, soft power and hard power clash, and of course when it serves the interest of those who maybe make the laws. And this is why we want to ask, is this the reason why there is no political will to answer the question which Dr. Eddy actually asked, why it is difficult for us to, or Africa, to attain that level where it can leverage practically soft power dynamics? Is it the lack of the political will, or probably another game that is playing on the probably the chessboard, where leadership lapses in Africa is already a challenge to its soft power dynamics, and of course keeping the country, the continent very or maybe at bay as far as global decision making are concerned?
Okay, I think it's all of the above, really. Seriously, it's all of the above, and I really like what Dr. Eddy said about the hard power going hand in hand with soft power, right? So, sure. But what we need to understand is the whole thing is all about unity. I think unity is the key for Africa to be able to leverage its soft power effectively. Until we get to unity, it's going to be hard because we are all divided, and divided by our colonial masters. And in doing so, they put in place tools to prevent us from uniting. Therefore, from leveraging our soft power to be able to fight for what we want. And when we look at the political accord, the economic accord that France had with all his colonies in Africa, those accords, they have to be broken first. This is what silent countries did. The first thing you have to do is break out of all these accords, so you are free to make your own decision, and then unite and put together a military force that if somebody tries to just dream of attacking you, they're going to feel the pain waking up after that dream. You know what I'm saying? So that's what happened to the 3 countries of the silent countries. I still take them as an example because they are showing us the way. This is how it's supposed to. And therefore, they have so much power militarily now by having, their own, they're making their own decision, buying their own materials, buying their own weapon. They're going to soon have some nuclear weapons, not nuclear weapon, with nuclear energy that they're going to start, making, or producing with the help of Russia and other countries. So they are building their soft power slowly but steadily. And that is why you see decisions made by US being reversed, because they see where there's a potential here. If we continue on this path, that these countries may turn against us completely. They may go to Russia and China and stick with them completely. But US doesn't want to lose those countries, those opportunities. So they reverse course. So if every region in Africa does what the 3 silent countries are doing, well, guess what? Things are going to change very fast. we decide to break up all these accords that was put in place during the colonization time, we have to break all these accords because we were not independent. We didn't sign those accords, as free people. We were on the sea.
Do you think the leadership lapses in Africa at the moment, especially in French-speaking Africa, should stand as an impediment to attaining that objective of actually breaking and probably entering new alliances?
Absolutely, because those leadership are put in place by France and by the colonial masters. So those people are there thanks to their colonial masters. So they can't do anything that goes against the grain. No, they will not go there. And if you try, they will kill you. They will exile you. They'll do anything to make sure that they stay in power. And this is why we have these people, these leaders that are staying in power for 40, 50, 1,000 years. They're still there. They don't want to go anywhere. So so that leadership issue is a key that is preventing us from uniting. So we go back to the 3 Sahelian countries. We see 3 new leaders, young leaders that have a different mindset. They came together and they're showing us the way to go, and everybody sees it. And those superpowers are being scared now. The French, the US, they are scared of these people, of these countries, because they see that if they continue this path and if other countries copy the same thing that they're doing, things may change in Africa in 10 or 20 years. And so that is why I'm saying leadership is key. But I'm telling you, until we break out of the prison that those colonial masters put us in those accords, these whether it's written or verbal accord, these partnerships that are not partnership, they're just they are using us, they are abusing us, taking our resources for free, all that stuff. The CFA franc, that's another big one. CFA franc is a currency that no one can use, even in Paris. You take CFA franc, you go to Paris, you can't use it. You take a CFA franc from Cameroon, you go to Cote d'Ivoire, you can't use it. Same thing, Cote d'Ivoire to Cameroon, you can't use it because they divide everything. They make sure roads are built differently. Railroads have different dimensions. Railroad from Cote d'Ivoire, the dimension is different from the one in Congo or in Gabon, in Cameroon. So there's no traffic. We can't travel between those different areas of the continent. So it's insane. So we have to break out of that first, and then we have and to do that we need new leadership. That's why I don't mind having military leaders in charge, because breaking out of that through elections seems to be impossible. And we've seen that in Cameroon, we've seen in Cote d'Ivoire, we see in many countries. Elections is not something that we can use. That will free us, because those people, they organize the election, they don't lose. Whatever is necessary, they will do to stay in power until they die.
Absolutely, and that's why aspects like democracy, human rights, we're highlighted as some of the tools coming swiftly. It's about understanding and then looking at the way forward. Coming back to you, Julia, we've heard some points which have been highlighted, especially from the African perspective, regarding the lapses or setbacks that we still face across the African continent. And I'm bringing particularly this question to you because from the start of the first Africa-Russia summit, we saw the engagement of Russia in Africa. And secondly, we want to highlight how Russia is gradually having a positive global image using a soft power tool like public diplomacy. And not to actually find Africa-Russia relationship, putting Africa in the same state where we find the countries at this juncture. What parameters, in terms of its Russia's foreign policy, do you think being put in place to ensure that the soft power dynamics of Russia do not actually clash with what we have in Africa, but then come as in collaboration to understanding and producing the alternative narratives of global power dynamics in the new world order?
First of all, I would like to say that according to my professional and personal impression, things like having an active foreign policy, or trying to have let's say well-packaged concepts, or promoting positive image of the country, all those have never been a priority for Russia. So unfortunately, especially starting from the 90s, when the country was in crisis, there was nothing or almost nothing done in order to create and promote a clear image of Russia in its foreign policy. It was either nothing coming from Russia, or things like hard power. So what you could hear and what you could mostly see in at the foreign sources were created by foreign actors and almost never by Russia. And to a certain extent, it remains the case right now. But we see, as you have rightfully mentioned, that the situation has been changing. So almost the same has been valid for the African continent. The Soviet Union in the previous times, it was very active in terms of creation of infrastructure, providing educational programs and all that. And in return, mostly it was asking for political support. So it was not about making money on it, or it was not about trying to make internal changes using it, but it was mostly about getting political support at the international arena, and just, expanding those cooperation practices. So whatever was done by the Soviet Union was left just like that. And many of those infrastructure objects are not even known to be built and created with the assistance of the Soviet Union. So now we see that Russia has been becoming more active, even though I would say that the most recognized brands or Russian brands in Africa at the moment are still AK-47, Putin, and Wagner. And that's pretty much it. If we talk about, just general public, just, an average person who is not really specifically interested in something, because in terms of Russia, to find information, you really need to go through a major search, and it would still be really hard to find something coming like first-hand information in English language or French language or Swahili or any other language that is widespread in Africa, not to mention, let's say, less spread languages. So the soft power, or even not the soft power, but foreign policy in Russia was never about self-promotion. And it's not a good thing, because it creates a very distorted understanding. And even now that we're talking, there are quite a lot of gaps in let's say, in the way things are being perceived. And it's just because there are not enough of sources of information. Russia is not really working on that. I mean, RT, Russia Today, has been doing a great job, yet at the same time, it wasn't covering too much. It wasn't really active, especially in Africa. It has just shifted to let's say, attempts of a better coverage right now, but the possibilities are very much limited. So I think it's a very unfortunate fact that the Russian foreign policy was never too active, and it was never trying to kind of promote, explain, or provide information sources for foreign audience, generally speaking. And here, of course, the language barrier plays a great role, because even if we talk about academia, education programs in Russia, most of them, if we're talking about quotas that are provided to foreign nationals, still the education programs are in Russian. So first the students come and they study Russian language, then they study in Russian. And in contemporary realities, this is definitely not enough, because it is necessary to be in the context, and it is necessary to, to be open for many other many other opportunities. I think the language barrier itself very soon will be much easier to overcome. It's already much easier given the fact that there are a lot of options with artificial intelligence, translations, and whatsoever else. Yet at the same time, there is still, a great space for improvement in terms of proactive foreign policy, because otherwise it should not be surprising that there is no understanding, there is no information, there is no clarity on what Russia stands for, what it is at the moment, what it can offer, and this is how we just, to a great extent, support some of the stereotypes, or support some of the evaluations that are not really balanced or are openly biased.
Okay. Thank you. Just to let you know, ladies and gentlemen, if you are just tuning in, this is Global Insight, brought to you by Globus, and today we are looking at soft power dynamics and how countries across the world can leverage this tool, the tools of soft power, to position themselves in the world of decision making at the global level, be it as far as economics concern, the sovereignty, economic, political sovereignty. Why not of all social sovereignty as well? And so, looking at some of the controversies regarding various countries at the global stage, where the international or traditional world order is actually experiencing a drastic shift in needs for countries to also ensure in radical policies which will strategically position them in this world of high globalization, though with also very significant level of contestations. And now we want to come to you, Professor Laid. There is, sorry, the many examples coming from Africa that we have highlighted, that the continent seems to still be lagging behind in terms of valorizing its soft power tools. It's just until recently that we saw that many Africans started embracing their cultural artifacts, their dresses, and even the hair and other aspects. And now we want to look at how we can actually, some people think that for that change to gradually come, there needs to be a strategy that tackles issues from the grassroots. We want to look at the mindset shift. What do you think are the soft power dynamics that African stakeholders, be it at the level of political leaders, civil society, and even individuals, can leverage on to have that that rethink of a mindset, or maybe a new mindset for Africa that will indicate a child growing with that clear understanding of the values of the continent, that even when confronted with such confusions like hard power, soft power, and the intersection of international rhetorics or ideologies, that will be able to understand and probably navigate the scenario constructively with a positive agenda for the continent.
Yes, well, thank you, Clarice. Really, the task is not easy, neither can be reached with mindset right now of our leader. Unfortunately, in Africa, there are so many problems, and if we look at that for the last few months, I would say a few weeks, there was a coup d'etat in Madagascar. Okay, you know that. Sure. There are 3 countries which were whose their leaders came to power by coup d'etat: Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Besides that, we have what represent this slap in the face of young generation who are expecting renewal of their political, of course, class. So we have also what happened the last few days in Tanzania. We have over 500 or 600 deaths following the election of President Samia. So can you say, so there are still places where things have not changed completely. On the contrary, they have not. They are going backwards instead, expecting change in terms of democracy. Although I have to admit, African Union, when it comes to the election in Tanzania, has released a statement condemning what happened and calling the president of Tanzania to ask for reconciliation and, of course, for dialogue and peace and discussion. So what I can say, I think the burden now lies on over the shoulder of those who are in Addis Ababa. And although African Union leadership has renewed its leadership with the new chairman, I have not seen yet any sign that signal that things will improve, because still we have some countries, unfortunately I have to say it publicly and openly, some countries, I don't want to mention them, to name them, I would say, they have brokered an agreement with the USA. What kind of agreement? That they agreed on deportation of African from USA to Africa. What does it mean, this? So, in other words, the Western still consider Africa not well developed, not well inspired, and not even well educated, because they accept this kind of and more than that, what's happening now in the world? We have so many summits between Africa and USA, Africa, European Union, Africa, Japan, Africa, South Korea, Africa, of course, Turkey, and so on and so on. This kind of summit is not for the good eyes, the beautiful eyes of African. It's only for our natural resource and our potential. And I appreciated what the president of Kenya a few months ago. He said, we don't like this kind of invitation where you are taken in a bus, in minibus, and taken like ordinary people, and then making business out of on our back. So I think Africa should now, all each African should consider, should feel free and sovereign in his decision. And political parties, social society should intervene, should interact, and should move towards more dignity, because if we let these things carrying on, I don't think we will survive for the next decade or so. Those we owe great respect to our leader in 1960s, Julius Nyerere, of course, Boumediene, and Gamal Abdel Nasser, and Nkrumah, and so forth. But right now, today, we are betraying all their principles and their value, the values they have defended. It looks as we are really leaders of today in so many countries in Africa are compromising their own independence by advocating some kind of, they call it partnership, but in other words, is some sort of economic colonization. So time has come that Africa should move on and towards more dignity, more respect, and more awareness that they deserve a future, better future for their own population. And of course, the adoption of the African Continental Free Trade Association, this should be valued on the ground and should be put into practice. And of course, it has to be enlarged to all region of the continent. I'm sorry to say that when we spoke about regional economic commission, some of them are completely dead. And I take the example of our continent, of part of our continent, the Maghreb Union is completely dead because of the stubbornness of Morocco to admit that there is they should solve their own problem with Western Sahara. And of course, although they try to distort the reality and problems with
All right.
the problem is Algeria, or rather, what Algeria has nothing to do. The problem of was source of blockade in this region of for direct negotiation between Morocco and Western Sahara.
Thank you so much, Professor Laid. Of course, the stakes are high, not just for Africa, but for the global world. How can we navigate this era with, a more defined agenda that suits the interests of countries across the world, and that is how we continue to analyze on this knowledge sharing platform, understanding the stakes of global politics at the moment, and understanding how we can reshape our countries, can reshape their internal policies that will meet the demands of the contemporary society. And I come back to you, Paseka Faromale, I beg your pardon. We want to look at another instance where maybe we can highlight to an extent of that Africa's voice has already been heard in global discourse, and due to its, some of the strategies, soft power strategies. We want to look at the International Court of Justice, the case presented by South Africa to the court pertaining U.S. involvement or Israel's onslaught in the Middle Eastern Palestinians. We want to also highlight, some aspects in South Africa, particularly the cultural aspect, because when we look at South Africa, we see that cultural alignment among the people, which is a tool for soft power. And now it's discussing how to create that that scope or horizon, that all this can transcend to other countries in Africa, where we can now have a common agenda to protect the sovereignty, the peace, unity of the continent, in order to fast track the economic project, which is the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Thank you, Clarice. Starting with the case of the ICJ, what I have come to learn, and I think as I got older, is that I've known in theory that bodies like the ICJ and the ICC were created for African leaders, or leaders of color and those who are black. So I've genuinely believed that for many years. Those who are not coming from the West, anything that is the other. In anthropology, we have a word with that we use where we say you are the other. The other means that you are removed from the norm being white and Western, European and American in this specific context. So I have known in theory that these courts were created for us. If you go against the West, or if you do commit a genuine crime against your own people, these courts will be used against you heavily. And I didn't take it serious until recently, where the USA was able to allow Netanyahu in the USA when he has an arrest warrant out. With that, I knew that this court and this case that we are pursuing, to an extent, it's starting to become frustrated. And I do, like you pointed out, something that was important, that in actual fact what South Africa has done is some form of soft power, trying to practice it. But on a practical level, and I also keep in mind that colleagues have been emphasizing this point of soft power a lot of the time, especially in the context that we've seen it used, is used by those who already have strong military power. That is very key in this context. South Africa doesn't necessarily have that. In the continent we might, but to compare to the rest of the world, we are far removed from that. So because of that context, it is very difficult for me to make the argument that there is validity or there is something that actually holds water in this case, because chances are we are not, if anything, we have problematized our relationship with the USA. I mean, I'm sure colleagues have heard of, we have all heard the discussion that Trump had yesterday, or the day before yesterday, where he was speaking about South America, saying that in Miami he's seeing a lot of South Africans who are moving away from communism, moving to Miami. We know that he's a delusional old man whose mind stopped working a long time ago. But with saying South Africa in that, from an observational point of view, I myself as a practicing anthropologist, what I do understand is that that means that is something that is of significance to him. So because we know the influence of Israel on the United States and on Trump specifically, it means that I understand that that case, if anything, it has not strengthened our relationship with the USA. A lot of this, a lot of our conflict or our problems with the USA comes all the way from that case that you were referring to. It goes all the way to that, because a lot of these they are problems that Israel has reported to the East, to the USA, and said this country is becoming problematic. And we know, like, I think we've had this discussion on this very platform where we're speaking about this in detail, so I do not need to go back to that, but I just wanted to point out those small things that are actually big that we do not speak to. But I do like the fact that you're pointing out something that is very key, that South Africa's case at the ICJ is something that we can see as an African country trying to use soft power for us to be able to influence a global perspective. But so far, I'm not seeing a lot that is happening. I'm hoping that something would happen in due time, because we can only be hopeful. But now I'm at a point where I am now starting to shift my focus from the Middle East and starting to focus more on what is happening in the continent. And I think that if we believe that we have this soft power and the capabilities to be able to use it, we should now be starting to see an actual effect, specifically in Sudan, which we've already spoken to earlier on. We should be seeing it in the Congo, which had to now had the conflict to an extent had to be resolved because it had to be reported in the United States. We should also be seeing it in these coups that we've been seeing, where there's this consistent thing that happens where the citizens of a country want something, but the government and these like SADC, these bodies that govern these regions go against what the people want. We should be seeing soft power being implemented right there in those specific cases and contexts. If we are able to, then I genuinely believe that we have a possibility of seeing Africa moving far away from the reality that we are faced with, which has become clearly so frustrating for the lot of us. For technically in this platform, a lot of us are African, you know. And with us being African, we should be hopeful of a more structured future for the continent, but with observations that we are currently seeing with previous elections, with the some of the coups that we're seeing. It means that there is what we are speaking here on these platforms, and there is reality on the ground. And I need us to start. I don't know how we would be able to do it specifically, but we will need to stop being ideological in how we position ourselves. And I understand a lot of us here, we are scholars in nature and in practice, and we have this ideal world that we want. We have this reality that we envision for the continent. But what is happening on the ground is far removed from it. And that is where my frustration is. I hope you do hear. Today I'm a bit frustrated with the continent because I'm not seeing what is happening. I'm not in a good place.
I can feel you, man. We all frustrated, seriously. It's not just you.
Absolutely, and that is why this topic actually came on the table to understand, because there is need to create that competitive space or edge to navigate all of these, dynamics at the global level, and this brings us to looking at the effects of soft power dynamics and how we can actually mitigate the dire effects of it. With you, Dr. Eddie Erica, I think I'll write off with you. I want to look at this book that was is written by Alexia Moratova, Change the World Together Ideology. And of course, we want to highlight this aspect of soft power, like food, the hidden genocide, how the common people of the US couldn't grow fruit and vegetables in the United States. It brings us again to look at the effect of soft power dynamics on the people at the lower level. We highlighted this in our preamble, looking at those who suffer from it when they do not understand. And this states how there was a bill that was passed in 2000 and should be 2010 according to the book, like the fake food safety bill that prohibited private people or people from actually growing vegetables in their private gardens, but gave the total rights to large farmers or large scale farmers and corporations. So we want to use this example, which has been written in this book, Change the World Together by Alexei Moratov, to try to understand again and contextualize the minimal aspects of soft power, which we probably still ignore in today's society, and which have very severe consequences on the population at the lower level.
This is one of the areas again, where our will actually contains that there is a confluence, right, between the soft power and the hard power. Looking, at production again, right, using some mechanism, whether it is at the local domestic level or even at the level of the World Trade Organization, for instance, to prevent a group of farmers from growing their own food or people from growing their own food, but then, we're turning around to give that power to multinational corporations who sometimes, not sometimes, actually most of the time, will end up being the cancer that what we have today. Are we going to call that softer power? Are we going to call that harder power? I wanted to be very, very, very at the border of that one as well.
Absolutely.
But since you mentioned food production in here, I believe that there is again an opportunity to talk about some other aspects of the thing. Earlier, I did mention, cocoa by referencing Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. This is a cash crop, not a staple food as possible. But let us not forget that even a country like Nigeria, who before the 1970s was a huge food producer, became a large food importer, right? Which means that Nigeria's extractive oil or benefit from oil is diverted towards importing rice and all of those things, knowing that Nigeria is the world the leading country when it comes to the production of cassava, for instance. The balance in here again is this. In terms of again, the South Corporation, which I will actually promote as being one of the alternatives to move towards, a pro-African agenda, an African-centered agenda that will bring those countries, together, strengthen, their internal relationship in a sense, or for the sake of strengthening, right, what they can be doing at the international level. Earlier, my brother from South Africa, talked about, South Africa, the role, it is playing, and of course, with the ICC complaint that, South Africa. But let us remember one thing, and I'm going to diverge a little bit in here, is that in terms of contamination, in terms of contagion, in terms of influence, in terms of persuasion, in terms of attraction, even during the time of apartheid, South Africa became an attractive country. Not because the African countries, African citizens were actually clapping or applauding the apartheid regime over there, but they were actually showing sympathy for the struggle for black liberation in that country. All of us remember that at some point, the black national anthem in South Africa, the Nkosisi Kelele Africa, became the national anthem everywhere. Everybody was singing that. This is the kind of a persuasion. And when Nelson Mandela comes out of jail, it is not just an African thing, it is the continental thing. When Nelson Mandela wins that election, it is not an African thing or a South African thing, it is the continental thing, a continental template. Today, some people are still referencing the CODESA and the work that was done to bring South Africa where it is today. Of course, with all kind of imperfection, we are still talking about, the economic, enslavement of black people in India. But at least at the political level, look at the road that South Africa trekked on. It was a template. And when President Thabo Mbeki came to power, his speech or the document that he wrote, I am an African, became the template for the revival of a Pan-Africanism, but at the same time also, he became the lead in terms of what we know today, unfortunately, as the African Union, built on the ashes of the Organization of African Unity. This is how a country can actually develop its potential to become so influential for its own neighbors around, to the point of actually strengthening Africa's foreign policy, if you want to look at that at the global level. It is not all. You have a country such as Cameroon, and people may ask, what about Cameroon? But remember, I believe it was 1990 when Cameroon plays the World Cup. The country is able for the first time to be the first African country to reach the level of what? Was it the quarterfinals? And almost got into the semi-final. Everywhere in Africa, everybody wanted to be Cameroonian. We dance on Makossa in all of the streets. And we talk again about, what soft power and influence. These are the little things. In West Africa, you have a country such as Nigeria that is playing that role. You talk about tech. You talk about Professor Lumumba, to laugh at them, say that, even when you are looking for the best Yahoo boys in Africa, you find them in Nigeria. You look for the best doctors, you find them in Nigeria, right? And next to that, you have a country such as Cote d'Ivoire. Despite the wrong role that our leaders have been playing to advance France-Afrique, and of course undermine all effort to consolidate those regional economic communities, what happened? Cote d'Ivoire, because of its cocoa, because of being a country that have hosted and being attractive to nationals from foreign countries and other African countries. But today, at some point, that country became so influential over its neighbors. All I'm saying in resting in here, Clarice, again, is this. With the right African-centered leadership, we have the possibilities of really creating some strong regional economic powers, some strong hegemons that will lead the way in such a way that today, as we talk about critical minerals, we talk about, agricultural, extractive, products, and all of those things, Africa will be in a better place, better position to negotiate its own interests in the global arena. That's all foreign policy is about. Where it's in terms of securing the continent, silencing the guns, and all of that, we have the potential and we can do that. Why? After more than 60 years, enough is enough. The IMF has not brought any one country out of what we call underdevelopment or poverty. The World Bank has not done that, but those institutions have been around. What is left? Professor Lahi, they talk about the African civil society. I agree with him. Professor Lahi talk about the African government. I agree with him. These are our own internal tools, and we have the possibility to do that. Clarisse, this is what I want to say. I believe, in terms of where the future lies in terms of, again, for Africa, utilizing all of the tools that exist in the global arena to advance its own foreign policy. At the end of the game, foreign policy is about going into the global market or the global arena to seek what is good for your own people. That's all it is about. And we have not been able to do that again for so many reasons. I want to rest on that, although there's another example I want to quote, but thank you for the opportunity.
So much. I think in the concluding phase, you can of course bring the example as we continue to actually help to educate the world, and of course bring change through knowledge or alternative knowledge. And we stay with the effects with you, Yulia. Now we are tempted to say that the effects of soft power in the negative form of it can actually balance the effects of hard power to an extent. Here we want to look at the battle of the mind. I don't know if this is a very practical example to use at this juncture, and looking at how, with all the narratives around the world from all the global countries, we want to look at how an effect of this soft power is the battle of the mind, where people, or maybe developing countries and other countries that have not yet positioned well in global economics, global politics, and even diplomacy, find themselves wanting as to what it's practical at this juncture. Please, your mic is muted.
Yes, today we've had a very detailed discussion with quite a lot of examples of soft power, and we see that its definition itself goes way above and beyond some of the specific cases. So even the soft power that has maybe not very constructive goals as its side effects, sometimes it might contain something that provides the good for the benefit of the people, right? So today, for example, some of the educational programs were mentioned and some of those things. So we can say that as in many things in life, there is no such thing as, a purely evil or purely good, let's say, method, because the side effects and the some of the collateral effects might be very different. And then again, it's all about who the beneficiary is. Yet at the same time, what is important to distinguish between over here, I guess, is the ultimate goal of that soft power. Is it just is it just promotion of cooperation, promotion of own approaches and own, let's say, patterns and models of how things are done? Or is it an attempt to unilaterally benefit from the other party? So that is the key, and I think it was mentioned also today in our discussion that in many cases it implies certain kind of manipulation into kind of betraying own interests in favor of satisfying the interests of a great power expanding its influence. So I think when we analyze soft power methods, and when we, maybe in some cases make decisions to implement them at our level, in terms of, the work of some kind of NGOs, or even the rhetorics that we spread as experts, as as people who are actively involved with youth in their capacities as professors and teachers and all those other things. So what is the actual aim? Is it to foster cooperation that could be mutually beneficial, or is it an attempt to trick people or societies into thinking that it could be beneficial for them, but at the end they would lose, right? So there were the examples given today of the elections in Tanzania and in Cameroon. And those two are also very interesting to look at, because in Tanzania, the election result was close to 100%, which, of course, as a matter of fact, as a number, poses a lot of questions in terms of the procedure and many other things. Yet we do understand that in many cases a good war is worse than a bad peace, right? And the same, I assume, is valid for stability, because once a system is being slowly or gradually reformed, it's one thing. When there is a revolution, what mostly happens is that an old system gets kicked down or knocked down. Yet at the same time, it takes a lot of time and pain in order to create a new one. So the revolutionary method is very good at destruction, but it's not really good at construction. Also because to a great extent, the opposition knows really well how to criticize, but it doesn't always know how to build and how to manage a country, especially. So my point here is quite simple. And it has to do with possible analysis and possible practical implications of soft power methods or other methods of foreign policy and other methods of promotion of interest. You know, just to try to see to answer that very question, chi buona, or who benefits. And if the answer is that only one side benefits, or you know, the let's say the benefits cannot be comparable because one gets almost nothing and the other one gets almost everything. So that should be at the core of the analysis and of decision-making process when we're looking at such cases or designing such cases, on when we're talking about such cases.
Imperative, and of course leaving us again to maybe take to the laboratory of knowledge and practicality to bring solutions to some of these aspects at the end. What is the agenda? What do we aim to attain? And of course, how useful is it to the vulnerable population who are always the most affected in times of you know, confrontations, be it at the international level or even internally. And we are almost culminating. We come with you, Professor Laid. I want to look at the aspects that's you know, across Africa, especially in the Republic of Cameroon, when you engage with citizens, getting their understanding of you know, the presence or the activities of global powers in their respective nations. You always hear you know, varied opinions, and it is imperative, like it's said, that every opinion as well which can be you know, given its practical form, it's worth looking into. We want to look at the China's soft power dynamics in Africa, because if you go to the informal sector, or probably in the local market, you see that China is involved, you know, I don't know if I should exaggerate to 100%, like to bringing in, you know, cheap, not just cheap labor, but then bringing goods that are actually, you know, that represent your culture, but then at a cheaper level. Want to look at you know, cultural regalia, something that has been a challenge to even the internal markets of such in Africa, particularly in Cameroon. So this is a soft power tool. How can we maybe you know, up the game to be at that level of you know, mutual benefit in terms of this collaboration, as highlighted by Julia Berg earlier?
Yes, well, I can conclude by saying one thing. we shouldn't be impressed by soft power. Although in some situations and in some circumstances, soft powers can be just an illusion, and I stress the illusion because those great power are abusing, misusing soft power for their own interest. Pardon.
Unfortunately, okay. Go ahead,
Yes.
Professor.
Yeah, we are using our power. We impose peace through strength. What does it mean? It means we are using peace, but we are seeking for peace by using military means. That's what we have seen in the Middle East and everywhere. Just a few days ago, President Trump threatened Nigeria to intervene because he alleged that Christians were mistreated by government in Lagos, in Abuja. This is completely wrong. So we don't have to be naive when it comes to soft power. We should just, each country in Africa should be aware of what are their potential in terms of soft power, in terms of being solid to recover their independence, their dignity, their economic, political, and diplomatic independence, to have their sovereignty. When they come to this position of having their own control of their own resources, our own natural resources and the human support, he can claim and proclaim and use soft power. Otherwise, we don't have to be, I said, illusioned by the concept, because Joseph Nye, before he passed away few months ago, he admitted that soft power is only for those who have the hard power and impose it. Otherwise, for African, for instance, we have, as I said, so many huge potential of soft power, but because we have one way or the other very bad government, very bad governance, and that's what is happening. And it's an opportunity for so many former colonial power to come in and again to once again to colonize Africa. You mentioned very often, Clarice, the term of mindset. The mindset cannot be done like this if we cannot decolonize our mind from the history of belonging, of dependence from the West. This is exactly what we should think. Thank you so much, and thank you to all the panel.
Thank you so much, Professor Laida. And we, of course, continue to understand, to analyze, to see how we can bring very practical solutions that we can give now meaning to aspects of international collaboration or cooperation, or to globalization, and to, collaborating in the new world order dynamics, and of course being intentional about finding possible solutions that will meet the interest of the people that are under the care of leaders, so those at the decision-making table. I come to you, Ashil Eki. I think I would love us to look at I don't know if this example is actually suitable at this moment. We want to look at the milestone or the strides that have been recorded. Can we independently say or categorically say that Obama becoming the president of the United States of America at one moment actually provided a scope for Africa, and it showed a soft power of the United States that worked in favor of other, countries. Here we are looking at immigrants. I think recently we saw Mandani winning a very vital position in the New York City in the United States of America, and we see individuals of acclaimed developing countries taking that strong leadership command in such countries with representing great force or powers. in global politics and decision making. What can we make of this? And of course, what other expectations or solutions can be proposed for future intercession that will bring a better, just society, if only we can have a just society?
Yes, just society. That's the key word there. Just society, right?
Sure.
It's the world is very complex. Every time we think we understand the world, something pops up somewhere that makes us feel like, okay, we still have to learn to know about people, their traditions, their cultures, their history, and all that is part of the human experience, right? So nothing is static, nothing is forgone. We're always evolving. There are always challenges. There are always issues that we need to deal with, and every day, there will be no time on this planet where there will be no problem for any country or for any person. We're always going to have issues. We're always going to have challenges, and we have to learn to live with them, and then manage them to the best of our abilities, so that we can all benefit from it. And that's where the issues, the difficulties are. How do we define peace? That is another keyword. Peace. People use that word peace in every instance. People who want to do harm to others say, oh, we want to do harm to those people because we want peace. And the people who are being harmed are saying, no, we don't want to fight. We want peace. So everybody's talking about peace. Everybody's talking about different opportunities, different solutions to get to that peace. But, peace means different things to different people. And we don't agree on those definitions. Therefore, the consequences are what we see. And so, it's a very, very complex thing. Soft power is the ability to influence the other person to, gain whatever gain you may get, from that influence. But the reverse also is true. The other party also wants to influence you. So it's a give and take. It's a back and forth. It's a give and influence. You influence me today, tomorrow I have to influence you. And it could be it doesn't matter the size at some point. Because a small country, for example, if a small country owns a mineral like rare earth that the U.S. is looking for, we look at Groenland. Is it Groenland? I think it's Groenland. The United States is trying to capture Groenland. Why do you want to go attack a Groenland? It's a tiny, tiny, tiny little place. Why? So Groenland has soft power over U.S. because it has something that the U.S. is looking for. And so that's the idea. And so the U.S. now, because they can't succeed, the right way, they have to use the military might and all that stuff to be able to influence them to change course. And so it means that it's going to be a challenge for our society, for our world. There's so much tension in the world today. You look at the world today, it's tension everywhere. People talk about nuclear weapon, nuclear war, nuclear weapon, nuclear war every time. So everybody's trying to get the other party to be afraid, and so the whole world is looking at, we look at Africa, we look at, fight between leaders that have been in power for so long and people who are, and the population that are starving, that are looking for better life, opportunities, and growth, and better life for the kids, for the grandkids, and everything. There's always a fight. There's always an issue. So how do we, solve these issues? There's no one solution. So it's gonna. This is if that was the case, if there was a solution, then everybody would be happy. But it's not going to be possible. So we just have to learn to manage those issues depending on our history, our culture, our customs. And hope that the organizations like the United Nations, the African Union, all these organizations that we put in place can help foster those opportunities to get to that end game, which is peace. But peace, peace is a very elusive word, and just like Dr. Zaglani mentioned, these things are difficult to really define in a way that everybody will agree with that definition. No, they're very difficult. And so that's why we're going to have challenges, and we have to understand that, only, our will to to live in peace with our neighbors, will help us overcome those challenges. Otherwise, it's not going to be possible.
Thank you so much. How can the world stand together and, of course, for the benefits of mankind? Coming to you, Paseka Faramali, we now look at, the interplay of hard power and soft power in Africa and how this is derailing continental project and the way forward.
Thank you, Clarice. I think as a closing remark, I think that's a good question, right? But it's a question that I think we've been speaking about for a very long time, and it's not a complex one that needs a complex answer. It is one, the answer is in front of us. The only way for the continent to find its way forward and move forward is for the continent to unite. But that is not going to happen anytime soon, as long as leaders are so concentrated in strengthening their control over their populations. So because that is the case, now it means that you are less likely to have leaders who are willing to sit down and allow themselves to be dictated to by someone else. If let's say we have one leader, we use the example of the United States, where all these different states could be previously recognized as countries, and then they came together to form one country. So if let's say, and also the African population is too big, but if we have strategic negotiations amongst ourselves, it would mean that other countries should be willing to open their doors to critique. They should be willing to be taking critique from their neighbors in order for them to successfully move forward. But that is less likely to happen. So now what that means is that we find ourselves in a very difficult position in which we will not be able to strengthen our soft power anytime soon, nor our hard power. Because the reason is that we would need to be economically stable. The countries with the strongest military powers, right, in the world, are the countries who have sufficient resources for them to be able to strengthen their military and to be able to strengthen those soft power techniques that we spoke to earlier on. So if that is the case now, it means that we cannot continue to have Europe and the rest of the world extracting from the continent. We would need to concentrate our resources so that they can empower us as a continent, and then from there we can start having these discussions and negotiations. But as things stand right now, we are still unable to resolve things like corrupt elections that we have recently seen. If we cannot resolve that, then it means that the same leaders who've been in power are going to continue to strengthen themselves over the next few years. And in them strengthening themselves, it means all these ideologies that we have and these beliefs that we know can liberate the continent are going to find themselves useless. And lastly, I would just like to speak out to Eddie and say, thank you for pointing out how you remind me of my friend. You remind me of a friend of mine and a colleague and a mentor of mine. His name is Nyakala Koke. He's from he's also from the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire. You reminded me of him because when you are pointing out South Africa's reality, I think that is something that is very key, and it becomes very frustrating as a South African when South Africans, I'm not saying every one of us, but when some South Africans do not understand that the liberation of this place and the need for this place to succeed is something that is so important, not just for us as South Africans, but for so many throughout the continent, and that is very important. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, and I don't even know how to move forward and strengthen that point and make it be known, because it's an entirely different conversation. But Clarice, thank you very much. May I please leave the floor? Thank you.
always start from anywhere or from somewhere. Just 1 minute to conclude there with you, Dr. Eddie Erica, about the way forward and, of course, how to navigate in this era where interest has actually been very visible and trends changing at every level.
It's very quickly. There is a new scrambler for Africa, which is definitely going on, which we all, recognize. Today, again, Africa is going to be the center and continues to be the center of the world in this economy, as we talked about the youth of this African population, right? That's a tool in there. How are we leveraging that? It is a beautiful when we hear people talk about, how in the next few years, most of the young people valid and the working age people will be in Africa. How do we leverage that? Second thing, we talk about critical minerals today, critical materials. We talk about all these important resources, natural that are necessary for where the world is going today. How Africa is going to play a part, in this new technology, AI, and all of that. There are definitely some opportunities in there. But again, for me, the way forward is considering that the global arena is where foreign policy is a wage, where foreign policy takes place, and considering the fact that foreign policy is about getting in this global stage what is needed for domestic politics, I will recommend that the African countries, continue to strengthen the South-South, cooperation. I'm waiting to see a time when we have new leaders, hegemon that, will emerge, in the respective African countries to actually lead the train or the wagons, if you want, move the path together. I'm also waiting for the time when we see the regional economic, communities, were truly playing their role, but not playing the role that they have been assigned by the Western powers, to take the example of the ECOWAS, for instance. And I want to end, Clarice, by thanking you for this other great opportunity, and acknowledge that I do know Brother Nyakalagoke very well, though I haven't seen him in a while, but I know him very well. The last portion of my intervention again is that the current insecurities that what we see in our countries, most of them related to how elections are waged. From Tanzania to Cote d'Ivoire to Cameroon lately, again, are other opportunities that other powers have used to advance their agenda in Africa. You see that as soon as those elections were concluded, the wave of congratulations that came from Western powers to Cameroon, to Cote d'Ivoire, and even to other countries, understanding that military coups are no longer the only ways people are actually capturing a state power, but you have a fake elections, failed elections, or manipulated electoral processes to keep in power civilian regime. I yield on that note. Thank you so much, Clarice, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Of course, there is need to change the strategy at every level as dynamics are changing. With you, Ashio Eki, the way forward, and of course, especially the role of the diaspora, ensuring that we really have that practical soft power tool to leverage in this very complex society.
Well, the diaspora has a very important role to play in Africa. Just like every diaspora in the world, we have a huge responsibility to develop our continent, to participate or to be part and active, to take an active and very important part of developing our continent, and to fight all these relics of colonization, all these mentalities that are in our continent that are preventing us from growing, from moving forward, from being free of all these old colonial masters. So we have a role of fighting, being part of the fight to liberate our country, hence the word Pan-Africanism. And Pan-Africanism it's a word that is being galvauded now. It's been overused now. That is really diminishing its real meaning. But we have to use that as a tool to liberate our continent, but not to repeat what the colonial masters were doing.
Okay.
If we keep them, if we get them to live and we repeat what they're doing, then we are worse than the colonial masters. So that's what we see today. We don't want to repeat that. So we have to participate in that and make sure that we contribute to lifting our people up and to bring in investments and all the economic might that we have gathered, here in the diaspora and to our countries and make our countries a shining place where, other countries, other world people are going to be coming and visiting and be surprised as, what we are able to achieve. So it's our responsibility and we take it seriously.
Okay. Very imperative, and with you briefly, Professor Laïd Zaklami, what can we actually take home as a very strategic message, not just for Africa, but then for all the countries in the world, in terms of international collaboration to actually ensure national identity while also engaging with other countries of the world and giving more relevance to the interactions at every level, since no country can function in silos?
Well, I think Africa as an emerging and rising continent can play a potential role in the near future, as long as they have to foster strong partnership, collaboration and cooperation. And because the world is moving towards erecting a new multipolar system, I think we should bear in mind that we cannot expect a lot from Western countries, which are still advocating some kind of some form of dominance and manipulation. That's why I do agree with the idea of Africa should be part, although we are part of South, the global South, we should support all countries in the world that are, of course, fighting for this. And I think Russia and within the President Putin is working towards building up a new order, economic and political order, based on respect of dignity and of mutual partnership and cooperation. And this is what we should. Otherwise, I am really not pessimistic, but I am really, I would say, cannot agree with democracy Western version, because they're always looking for some kind of form of, as I said, disdain and some form of manipulation, dominance. That's why time has come that we should support Russia, China in their way of building a new order that is putting aside the system we inherit from the Second World War II. And thank you once again for being part of this panel.
Thank you so much also for giving importance to the discussion. We're going to end with you, Julia Berger, from all the analysis presented by the esteemed panel. Today we can actually attest that maybe the roles of world order is actually probably ended because of the changes we are seeing in terms of international diplomacy. So it is imperative to engage strategically and differently. So what are those proposals which you think countries can leverage on to find themselves relevant in the global decision making?
I think what is supposed to play a key role in the change of approach is the fact that now we have more opportunities for instant information exchange And now it's becoming much more difficult for the ones trying to manipulate and pull through some lies and some distorted information to achieve their goals, because people can have alternative sources of information. Social media is playing a huge role. And if certain instruments are introduced in order to filter the fake news, and if people use their critical thinking, analytical thinking more, instead of just accepting information as it is, or accepting headlines or clickbait headlines as the truth, I think we will face a situation when it would be much more difficult to use some of the, let's say, evil methods.
Absolutely, which is very imperative, and I think I can conclude by saying that to ensure that a nation's agenda is constructively, presented at the international level, there is need for patriotism, intentionality, and a clear strategy or agenda that will suit the demands of the global world, especially in the times of changing dynamics, shifting alliances, or even the creation of new alliances enshrined in the international law and other. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of today's dispositive program, Global Insight, brought to you by Globals in collaboration with the Pan-African Media TV. And today we highlighted soft power dynamics and how relevant or effective it is in the new world order, and probably some of the examples which countries, especially political leaders, civil society, the media, and other stakeholders can leverage on to ensure that we have a global world that is more conducive or peaceful for mankind. Thank you also to the technical crew for ensuring a smooth run of the program. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for always trusting us. And of course, information is knowledge, and I wish you a splendid weekend as you stay in the company of our transmissions. Bye-bye.
This program was brought to you by Globals.